While Erie's men were sacrificing their lives thousands of miles away, Erie's home front was working around the clock to produce materials and supplies for World War II. Erie's workforce nearly doubled in size between 1940 and 45. Pennsylvania manufactured 6.6% of total United States military armaments produced during the war, ranking 6th in the nation. All types of materials were produced in Erie to be shipped overseas and used by American troops. GE Transportation was one of the top 3 producers from the war era. The company made a variety of products utilized in the war. GE's workforce skyrocketed during war years, going from nearly 5,500 workers in 1940 to a little more than 9,500 workers during the war.
Our primary thrust was locomotives, of course, switcher locomotives of various sizes, 25-ton, 30-ton, 50-ton, 65-ton, and they were used in ordnance plants, naval depots, ammunition plants, and that sort of thing. They also built steam turbines used in destroyer escorts and Navy ships. They also built B-29 gun turrets and howitzers, machine guns, searchlight power plants.
Their primary product was steam turbines. They made turbines for Navy and merchant marine vessels that were, serving in Normandy and serving in North Africa, all across the Pacific, and Sicily as well. They built about 1,300 of them during the war.
Continental Rubber and Hammermill were also in the top 3 companies that produced for war efforts.
They were making all kinds of rubber for military vehicles, a lot of tanks, a lot of vehicle parts, and tires. Of course, tires were huge.
Most Erie factories completely stopped producing their normal products, converting to full-time war production, like Mark's Toy Company. The Erie Company ceased toy production for 4 years and instead produced parts for bombs, hand grenades, and machine guns. Rogers Brothers Corporation, located in Albion, made trailers used to ship and carry American tanks. At full-time war production, it was producing 10 trailers every 24 hours for the U.S. military. Erie Concrete and Steel Company made Navy lighters. Erie Steel Construction Company, now Erie Strayer, built thousands of clamshell and dragline buckets for the Army and Navy. Erie Shipyard and Perry Shipyard both had contracts with the U.S. Navy and U.S. Coast Guard. Erie Forge and Steel made machined crankshafts for submarines, minesweepers, and other small ships. Between 1940 and 1944, shipments of Bucyrus Erie excavators totaled more than $44 million. Swanson Ore Factory in Albion made ores for the U.S. Navy. Erie's Lord Corporation was actually taken over by the U.S. Navy during the war.
There was a conflict between the federal government and the Lord Corporation here in Erie, and Lord was very unwilling and refused to lower their prices. They were happy to keep their prices the same in 1942, 1943, 1944, but the government said, no, you have to reduce your prices for just all intents and purposes during the war. And their directors, or whoever was in charge, still wouldn't. So President Roosevelt ordered the government to take over their factory. So it became a government-run factory, in that a Navy Admiral, Admiral Bowden, he became the CEO of the Lord Corporation, and they were turning out like tanks, weaponry, ammunition, and most of the personnel kept their jobs. I mean, they didn't clean house or anything like that. But ironically was that after a few months, for the sake of sustainability, Admiral Bowen realized he had to raise the prices of their products.
Liberty ships had their place in the Erie area. National Transit Company in Oil City produced engines for Liberty ships, and the best source of photos of them turned out to be the private collection of William F. Hultgren from Erie, who had the largest photo collection of Liberty ships anywhere in the world. The full-time work week was bumped up from 40 hours to 48 hours. Most Erie factories worked around the clock in 3 shifts, never stopping production. Erie contributed in other ways outside of industry, too. Many Erie residents remember rationing sugar, nylons, rubber, and gasoline for war efforts.
I was working at Eckerd's drugstore downtown, and we'd stand in long lines waiting to get a pair of silk stockings. We'd hear somebody had silk stockings, and we'd wait in line a long time to get a pair of silk stockings. And I know the men couldn't get cigars, because I remember when I worked at Eckerd's, the president, I'd see him taking men downstairs at night, sometimes. And I thought, what the heck are they coming in late at night like that down there? And somebody said, he's got some cigars down there, he's selling them.
You had cards, a ration book, and to get gasoline there was a certain stamp. I was too young to drive or anything, but I can remember it. Or if you wanted meat or butter or things of that nature, your mother sent you to the store, you had to bring your ration book in those days with you, and the grocer would tear out what he wanted.
There was black market, a lot of black market trying to sell stuff. Yeah, and there were certain things you couldn't get at the store, food, Yeah, it was, that part was kind of rough sometimes.
It changed, it evolved as the war kind of progressed. I think you got issued your rationing stamps through the mail, and there was also a rationing board too. If you needed kind of a break or you needed more stamps or a change in your rationing status, there were different levels of rationing. There were top people in the community and police officers that had kind of no limits on what they could do or what they could obtain, and then there was kind of a pecking order downwards.
The city was one of the best when it came to war bond efforts, always ranking above average compared to other cities its size.
Erie was very, very participant in buying war bonds. GE, Continental Rubber, American Big Foundry, they had a slip that you filled out, an application you filled out, and they would deduct part of your pay and put it towards war bonds itself.
Where they sold war bonds, and you bought a war bond. Well, you probably see things in the movies where the movie stars had big rallies and selling these bonds and stuff to help the war effort.
Erie also had numerous blackout drills, should an enemy attack ever happen, and a national blackout be mandated, so that planes could not identify their targets simply upon eyesight.
They had blackout nights, you had to practice, all right? And I can remember my dad bought a special kind of shade so that he could put them in when the air raid came. We could have all the lights on in the house and so on, and you couldn't see outside, because there was a guy that would patrol, and you would be fined if a light would come out.
Schools practiced air raid drills in case there was ever an enemy attack on U.S. soil.
Air raid drills, we had a practice for air raid drills, and in school we did too. And later on, when the atomic bomb was dropped in the 45, we had to practice what to do if a bomb was dropped, and all the kids would have to go under their seats and hide, went under their seats in case the bomb went off, the atomic bomb. A lot of good that would have done, but that's the way we did it.
German prisoner of war camps could be found in Northeast, Sheffield, and Kane in Pennsylvania, and in Dunkirk and Westfield, New York. Patriotism and nationalism were at an all-time high. Erie residents would do anything to help their young men fight for their freedom.
It was kind of exciting, as an 8-year-old boy, to think, and I would see kids in the neighborhood, young men who were about 10 years older than I was, in uniform now. They were drafted, and they're all so good looking, walking down the street and with these uniforms on. So we never realized what war meant. It was exciting to us until you saw a casualty list, and you saw a neighbor crying because their son was killed someplace and so forth, and you realize that war was bad, that it was killing these kids that you grew up with, people you grew up with and admired and saw how handsome they were in their uniforms or something, but we're not going to return.
Oh, you couldn't wait to get the paper at night to see if somebody you knew, had died.
Erie life was centered around war. What they did, what they saw, what they wore, all revolved around war.
During the war, there were no gifts. My dad would try to find some kind of a tree. We'd have a Christmas tree, but we didn't have gifts. They had no money to buy gifts.
We would go to a movie unless we knew there was going to be a war scene in it. We didn't want to see love scenes. I can remember Casablanca coming out. It was considered one of the greatest movies of all time. I didn't want to see love scenes. I wanted to see the Germans. I wanted to see the Japs fighting. We didn't want to see Casablanca.